My name's Tom Fellows'u. I'm a British artist. I've been living in Istanbul for just over 10 years now. My studio's here in Maslak Otosanayi. My dad's a painter. He's actually a sign painter, but he also painted in his spare time when he had some. So I grew up watching him paint. He wasn't much of a teacher. He was more of a just a, showed me how to do it rather than explaining how. And so I was always influenced by his painting from an early age. And then at school, it was very much the only thing I was really interested in. That and design. I was into design and art, but the rest of it was kind of take it or leave it, really. So with that in mind, it was always kind of my goal to make art. But I always felt like because of my dad's life, being an artist was kind of impossible, to make a success of it. It was more something we did on the side rather than your main thing. So I did architecture at university as well, as a kind of, well, I did product design first, then I did architecture after that. But then I realised that I don't really want to be an architect, I don't want to be a designer, I wanted to be an artist, so I just went for it. With my current process, yeah, it's very much, I have a rhythm where I have to prepare the panels first. I have to make sure the panels are ready for the paint. Because once the paint is on, I can't really change anything then, the paint is kind of finished. So I have to make sure everything's in place before the painting starts. And after that, really the surface itself and the paint itself is in control of the rest of the process. So I'm kind of a third wheel in the process after that. But obviously with my work, I'm trying to constantly push it and make it evolve into something else and go into new directions. So I like to experiment maybe 50% of the time with new materials and new techniques, which often doesn't go the way I expect it to, which sometimes is a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. So it depends. It's a scientific process almost. Yeah, I mean, like when I first got to Turkey, I started painting again full time, and I was using oil and canvas, and I was kind of experimenting with different mediums as well back then. But then when I moved to Otosanayi, I realised that I had all these different materials around me that could be experimented with. Being in an industrial space, there were techniques that I could use that I couldn't use in my home studio. So, well, lots of people ask me the question, like, why do you use aluminium? Why do you use car paint? I can't really answer that question because I feel like they're not the focus of the work. I feel they're more of a means to an end when it comes to what I'm trying to achieve. I guess I'm trying to create surfaces and environments that are analogous to nature and those processes in nature. Well, I've started working on these new black pieces using insulation board, which is, a lot of people are confused when they see the work because it looks like a very step in a different direction to what I was doing before with the aluminium surfaces. But to me, I feel like it's the same process because it's a destructive one. When I work back through 10 layers of car paint down to the aluminium with these new black pieces, I feel it's the same process, just on a kind of more three-dimensional scale. But it leaves a more deliberate 3D effect at the end. But in effect, the concept is the same. Yeah, my work's definitely inspired by the world around me, the physical world. I mean, you know, just look at the materials I'm using. They're directly inspired by the environment I'm currently in, you know, car painting and these industrial metals. You know, I've often said if I had moved to China or Italy or wherever, I certainly think I wouldn't be making these works. You know, they're directly inspired by Turkish materials, Turkish concepts. So, yeah, I mean, there is certain, you know, philosophies that I'm thinking about, but it's definitely, I'm always observing the world around me and taking inspiration from that. Yeah, it's always interesting to see people looking at the work, because I mean, the work itself is very dependent on its own environment. So when I take it from the studio and put it in a gallery or someone's house, the work behaves differently because of the light, because of the space that it's occupying. And then so when you introduce a third party, like the viewer, into that, you know, for example, a child will look up at it, so they'll have a different perspective because it reflects the ceiling rather than the windows. And I'm always interested, especially to see how children react to the work. They always often have the most interesting words. I think one of them called them the wet cloud, which is a great way of describing it. So, yeah, it's the works are meant to be interactive. They're meant to be, and I always take pictures of them, but they're kind of impossible to photograph. So I try to do more videos to give people a sense of how they react to movement. I would say David Hockney is probably my favourite painter ever. I mean, I wouldn't say his technique definitely has influenced my work necessarily, but his approach to water has always been something I've kind of been drawn to, and I think that maybe has influenced me a little bit. He often talked about this surface being something you can look on, you can look into, you can look at. It has this, you know, solid quality, but also this transparent nature. And so he's often painted it throughout the years in different ways and dealt with it in different ways. So I suppose, yeah, I guess that's my biggest influence. So not many people are aware when I say my work is influenced by Turkish materials that I actually use, you know, common materials such as baklava trays. I mean, the smaller works that I use, they're actually just standard size pressed baklava trays. But for the bigger works, I actually still go to the same baklava tray guy to make them, and he welds. But I also use tantuni trays and çiğ köfte trays. Because I was actually trying to, when I first started in this process, I was using aluminium plate, and my favourite part of the result was always the edges. And then I was trying to source somebody who could make me kind of these thick-edged panels, and I realised there's one right there in the baklava shop. So I sourced some, experimented with them, and then as I realised I was enjoying that edge, I wanted to create a surface full of edges, because that edge is the area that I'm not in control of. When you're sanding these surfaces, the edge is where all the paint comes off first, and you can't really stop it, it kind of just does it. So that's when I kind of went in the direction of manipulating that surface to create a surface of edges that were out of my control, which then led me to looking at these other surfaces like tantuni, which is basically one big. I'm really interested in science and technologies and geology. I mean, really, the works are essentially this analogy to geological formations, really. That's always been something I've always had at the back of my mind when I'm working, is this idea of compressing, adding layers, removing layers. Well, my wife's Turkish, so we decided to move here, I was trying to paint in London, but it realised that if I came here, we could, make it happen. Because to make art in Turkey, especially in Otosanayi, things are just a lot more straightforward. You can just get things done. Whereas in London or anywhere else in the world, it's a bit more difficult. But yeah, my wife was living in London. She suggested we move here and haven't really looked back since.